From the moment Senior Chief Arthur Arty McMillan settled onto that unyielding bus stop bench, the morning air was calm. And then everything shattered. 78 years old, Arty had walked a few shaky blocks to catch the 215 bus to his quarterly VA clinic appointment. He wasn't loitering, just waiting, with an old paperback in hand to distract himself from arthritis in his knees and a racing heart. Yet a young officer, Officer Miller, approached with rigid posture and no empathy. "Sir, you've been asked to move along 3 times, he barked, voice flat and clipped. Miller's hand hovered over his belt, taser ready. Arty swallowed his surprise, offered a quiet, "I'm waiting for the 3 p.m. bus to the clinic." But empathy died on Miller's tongue. He scoffed, as though the scars of decades of classified wartime service meant less than any generic authority badge. Arty began to close his book, rising slowly, each inch upward a calculated strain on creaky joints. The officer's message was harsh. "Loitering is disruptive. Move now or be cited." It wasn't a request, but a command. Arty delivered another calm answer. "I am traveling, officer, for medical reasons." But it made no difference. The rigid adherence to a minor ordinance outweighed years of dedication. Miller's jaw tightened, and he took a step closer. "Last warning," he said. Before Arty could respond, a sudden blast of incapacitating pain convulsed through his frail frame. The taser's prongs buried into his chest, each jolting current feeling like a betrayal of everything he'd ever fought for. The crisp click followed, Miller's taser sparking as Arty slumped off the bench, paperback tumbling at his feet. He gasped, mind swirling in a white-hot haze of humiliation and shock. Once a decorated naval warfare specialist operating in anonymity and secrecy, now he was collapsed on concrete like a common criminal. Bystanders froze. Some gasped, others lifted phones. Then Arty, gathering fading strength, pressed his hand to his chest. He tasted bitter cold and betrayal. The journey he'd prepared for, medical care, quiet healing, had turned grotesque. A routine bus ride had become a moment of shame and ruthless overreach. And though he lay trembling beneath the indifferent afternoon sun, he knew something deep inside had been triggered. A veteran's dignity was wounded, and that hurt mattered, more than any ordinance or parking rule could ever understand. As Arty lay stunned on the concrete, each breath a laborious reminder of betrayal, something inside him compelled action. More than physical pain, it was about principle. With trembling fingers, he reached beneath his shirt to activate a small, almost forgotten relic. The Nightingale blue panic button issued decades earlier during his time in covert recovery work. It was a relic connected to the Pentagon's most discreet emergency protocols that, he believed, had long since faded into memory. Yet in that moment of humiliation and dread, he pressed it, hoping it still held power. The LED blinked once green, then again. An echo of silent promise. Leaving behind his paperback and dignity on the bench, Arty closed his eyes and let the weight of his service speak louder than his voice ever could. Moments later, the city's ambient noise shifted. The wail of approaching sirens grew, but not the typical screech of police or ambulance. Instead, the sound was deeper, resolute, and disciplined. Unmarked black vehicles, their lights low and controlled, pulled up with military precision. Officer Miller, still hovering near Arty's prone figure, paused mid-command, confusion twisting his expression. Within seconds, a team in full tactical gear, devoid of visible insignia, sprang into formation, 6 figures fanning out, creating a secure perimeter around Arty. Their movements were fluid and confident, marked by unquestioned authority, their focus unwavering and professional. One leader knelt at Arty's side, removing the taser prongs with quiet care, checking his vitals. Arty, eyes clenched shut, heard the voice that followed. "Senior Chief McMillan, we have you. Extraction protocol initiated." He managed to nod, voice weak as he whispered, "Nightingale Blue." The leader acknowledged with a crisp, "Understood, sir," and began coordinating with unseen command. Miller's earlier bravado evaporated at their presence. A voice crackled over Arty's radio. "Stand down. This is an authorized federal recovery team. Level 1 liaison en route. Do not interfere." The transformation was absolute. Arty was no longer a suspect, but a high-value protectee. Within minutes, a black helicopter, unmarked except for a subtle federal emblem, descended onto the quiet street, blades whipping up dust and debris. Medic-trained operatives carefully stood Arty and escorted him toward the chopper, bypassing ambulance crews still arriving. Passers-by watched, mouths agape. Officer Miller, pale and shaken, stumbled to his feet, recognition finally dawning on him as radio chatter confirmed this was no local affair. Arty paused before boarding. He looked back at Miller, not in anger, but in worn, resolute sorrow. Then, supported by 2 specialists, he stepped into the aircraft. The helicopter lifted off with silent strength, carrying Arty away from his moment of shame and into a new reality. Within hours, news of the tactical response had circulated through official channels. Miller was suspended as veiled internal affairs investigations commenced. The Department of Defense and Justice opened a joint review. Public apologies were issued to all veterans through city channels. And Arty, treated not merely as a victim, but as a national asset, was transported to a secure military medical facility, his injuries acknowledged, dignity restored, and his identity protected. In the aftermath, officials quietly confirmed that his emergency action had activated protocols never before used in public for a civilian, even one with extraordinary service. Arty had pressed a button, and in doing so, reminded a nation that even forgotten systems still stand ready when a brother in arms is in crisis. Arty's consciousness swam as he was assisted from the street to the unmarked black helicopter, each step a surreal continuation of his shock. The federal tactical intervention had arrived in full force, unmarked SUVs, skilled agents, and a silent command hierarchy that left Officer Miller frozen in disbelief. Now, in the cockpit, Arty's eyes fixed on the rugged faces of operators who treated him with urgent, disciplined care, no longer as a suspect, but as a priority asset. Their professionalism suggested years of covert coordination, bandaging his wounds, monitoring his vitals, and inserting anonymity into every gesture. The helicopter lifted with steady power, leaving the stunned crowd behind and carrying Arty toward an unknown but undoubtedly secure destination. In the cabin, the team leader, his voice low and respectful, confirmed again, "Senior Chief, you're secure now. We're headed to a tactical support facility for medical clearance." Arty nodded, exhaustion mingling with relief. He realized he'd been activated under an extraordinary protocol, one designed for the protection of high-value military personnel in civilian crises. By the time the helicopter touched down at a discreet government site, Arty was feeling the first wave of genuine care in hours. Doctors in civilian attire stepped forward, cameras barred, conversation hushed. They checked his heart, his bruises, even his medications. It was standard care, except this was no ordinary patient intake. An experienced Navy corpsman from Arty's own branch arrived to greet him, offering a nod of recognition that felt like coming home. A sense of belonging washed over him. Here, his service meant something. Within the sterile calm of the facility, Arty was offered a quiet room to rest. From a small phone plugged discreetly into the wall, he called his daughter. His voice cracked with emotion as he simply said, "They saved me." She wept on the other end, gratitude and relief trembling in her own voice. "I thought I'd lost you," she said. Arty found strength in her words. "I'm okay now," he replied softly. "I'm taken care of." Meanwhile, at the original bus stop, Officer Miller had been escorted away by local law enforcement, radioed up, and told to await federal investigators. The message was clear. A local officer's misjudgment had triggered an back at the facility. Arty received a private briefing. A Department of Defense representative respectfully explained that his activation of the Nightingale Blue panic system was the first public use of such a protocol in decades. Its very existence had been classified, its deployment unprecedented. They assured him that his medical care would continue at no personal cost, that his privacy remained protected, and that evening, Arty joined a small group of veteran advocates and medical advisors in a private conference call. They discussed lessons learned, improved training for civilian authorities, recognition of emergency panic systems. As the facility lights dimmed and Arty prepared for rest, fatigue and relief intertwined. He pressed the discreet pendant on his bedside, a small reminder that night, in a secure reset, Arty McMillan understood that courage doesn't always roar on a battlefield. Sometimes it whispers through a single button push, and sometimes it demands, by the next morning, the fallout from the incident had reverberated far beyond a single city block. Officer Miller found himself at the center of a torrent of public outrage and official scrutiny. His uniform had been replaced with civilian clothes as he awaited a sudden reassignment pending the outcome of an internal affairs investigation. Local news outlets splashed headlines across their morning broadcasts. Officer tases 78-year-old veteran. Pentagon responds. Social media churned with demands for justice, and hashtags like "Respect Our Veterans" and "Never Forget" soared in trending rankings. The mayor, Mayor Elena Rivers, held a press conference alongside Chief of Police Marcus Delgado. Her voice was firm and contrite. "This is unacceptable," she said. "Our veterans deserve honor and dignity, not tasers." Delgado offered a formal apology on behalf of his department. "Internal practices are being immediately examined. We are cooperating fully with DOD and DOJ investigators and reviewing the use of force protocols for elderly and disabled individuals." The pledges earned respectful nods from advocacy groups and VA representatives who had arrived to show solidarity with Arty. Meanwhile, at City Hall, council members introduced sweeping reforms during an emergency meeting. They approved funds to install better signage at bus stops, train officers on veteran awareness, and ensure all patrol officers receive annual sensitivity training. A mobile Veterans Liaison Unit was proposed, designed to connect older veterans waiting at stops or shelters to VA services, medical transport, or outreach teams. Local veterans groups praised the swift action. L'Agence Post No. 62 published a statement. "The swift accountability shown today reminds us that in unity, respect endures." Back home at his assisted living facility, Arty McMillan received a flurry of calls and letters. Local residents arrived with homemade cards expressing gratitude and sorrow that such a thing happened. A group of middle school students delivered fresh flowers and a handmade quilt. But what touched Arty most was a letter from his granddaughter. "Grandpa, they tried to break you, but they didn't know who they were dealing with. I'm so proud." He pressed the letter close and felt the weight of hundreds of voices standing with him. Officer Miller, meanwhile, was officially placed on unpaid leave. His commanding officer delivered the news with visible reluctance. Miller's reputation was on a downward spiral. Traditionally honored by police commendations, he now faced accusations of ageism, misuse of force, and insensitivity to mental health and veteran care. His legal team prepared a defense, but city officials were exploring options to settle civil claims without going to court. Miller's fate now hinged on the internal review, federal oversight, and a shifting public mood that largely sided with the elderly veteran. At the Department of Justice and DOD offices, officials confirmed that a task force would oversee the investigation into this unfortunate event. Their goals were clear: to determine whether policy violations occurred, whether training gaps existed, and whether changes would be recommended nationwide. A Pentagon liaison emphasized to the press, "No veteran should ever be treated this way. Our protocols are being scrutinized and updated as necessary." By week's end, the city's bus system began phasing in advanced driver training and creating a feedback hotline for riders. The mayor's office announced a town hall event centered on veteran affairs, respect, and community. When the date arrived, Arty, though hesitant, agreed to attend. He sat in the front row as partners from the VA, police, bus drivers, and local advocates all made joint pledges to honor veterans in everyday service. As the event concluded, Arty rose to speak. His voice trembled at first, but grew steadier with resolve. "I didn't call for headlines," he said. "I only asked to wait my turn, and instead I became the spark for change. If my pain today means no other veteran will be tased for waiting, then this was worth it." The room rose and applauded, not just for the veteran who had endured injustice, but for everyone who chose accountability and respect. As the sun dipped low over the city, Senior Chief Arthur Arty McMillan sat quietly in his new assisted living porch, reflecting on what had transpired. Just days ago, he was a 78-year-old veteran, tased and humiliated at a bus stop. Today, he's become the catalyst for change, surrounded by compassion, respect, and renewed purpose. The community rallied, policies shifted, and voices were lifted. All because one man had the courage to press a hidden panic button and say, "Enough." Arty's story reminds us, dignity isn't a privilege, it's a right earned through selfless service and protected through collective responsibility. When systems fail our veterans, true leadership steps in, not just to apologize, but to act. Change isn't born from silence. It's sparked by quiet conviction voiced at the right moment. Respect isn't handed out, it's upheld. Every individual, especially our elders and those who served, deserves basic compassion. When we stand up, calmly, firmly, and with integrity, we can transform injustice into awareness and disrespect into reform. If Arty's story moved you, type "honor" in the comments and share a time when respect mattered in your life. And if you believe every veteran deserves dignity and compassion, please subscribe for more real-life stories that inspire us to do better for ourselves and our community.